Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate your support on this. My name is Kyle, and I serve as Director of Culture and Community Engagement here at the district's DEI office. And I want to welcome you all to Equity in Practice. In short, Equity in Practice is a series and a collection of community learning opportunities hosted via Zoom monthly by the school district's DEI office in collaboration with district staff, community advocates, community-based organizations, that are focused on equity, cultural awareness, and social justice. And like all of our sessions, I want to also just make mention that this presentation will be recorded, and that's indicated in your top left corner. If you are interested in sharing this presentation after the fact with a colleague, you'll be able to find this recording and others like it at SDP Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on YouTube. So feel free to subscribe if you're enjoying the content. As Ramadan approaches, we're grateful to collaborate with the City of Philadelphia's Office of Muslim Engagement for this presentation. And I would like to thank them in advance for what we believe will be a very great and informative session. So the goal of this session is to provide valuable insights on best practices, while also highlighting key accommodations and introduce the Ramadan Ready Toolkit, which is a comprehensive resource designed to help educators, administrators, community members create a welcoming space for all.
Oh, here we go.
So for context, this session will include two parts. So first, the Office of Muslim Engagement will engage in their presentation, which will be about 20 minutes or so. And then we will leave space for questions that are focused on Ramadan and how to prepare. Please feel free to utilize the chat in the meantime. And we're asking for all participants to remain on mute until the question and answer portion of the session. So once that concludes, I'll be sure to follow up and share more resources via email. But without any delay, I want to hand it over to Imam Kaiser Abdullah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Kyle, thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction to all members of SDP's DEI office and DEI team. Really, thank you for having us here today. As mentioned, my name is Kaiser Abdullah. I am just short of 1 year in to my tenure as the first director of the Office of Muslim Engagement for the city of Philadelphia. So this is something that's new in the city of Philadelphia. And you know how they say it's either the first go at it is either going to be really awesome or really not so awesome. So so please keep me in your thoughts that this year is going to be an awesome time for all of us. So this and good afternoon to everyone, and for those who identify as Muslim or speak Arabic, assalamu alaikum. We know that we are just under 2 weeks shy of the start of the month of Ramadan. And I'll go through some of this in the presentation as we go through this. But for right now, for Philadelphia, and the United States in general, Ramadan is expected to start somewhere around February 28th, March 1st, right? For some individuals who start the months by the calculation, they already know when it's going to start, which is going to be the 28th. For others who do the local sighting or the sighting of the moon, which is still based on a calculation, but those who do the sighting of the moon, it may start on the 28th or on March 1st. So this is why there's some level of discrepancy. It's not that people are just doing their own thing. It's all within the broad scope of the tradition. In speaking with Kyle, my understanding is that that many of you may have gotten the toolkit that I'm going to present today. And for those of you who didn't get it, it should be emailed out to you after the presentation, along with the recording of the presentation. We have a Q&A session segment after the presentation. So if you want to hold your questions until then, that's perfectly fine. I encourage you to do so. However, if you have a burning question that you find we need to answer before we proceed, by all means, put it into the chat and I'll make that determination as I see it coming up. I'm going to try to pay attention to the chat as much as I possibly can as well. Let me put that on another screen so I can honor that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I will not go through all of the text in the document, but I'm just going to highlight certain things, right? As many of you in the school district, I know how challenging it can be when somebody reads everything that you see on your screen. So I'm going to spare you that um, that torture this afternoon. So this is we have the date on it as 2025-1446. So that's just the first thing I'm going to point out here, that when you see dates like this, think of it in the same context of how you had BC, BCE, that type of dating system. For us, 1446 is 1446 years after the Prophet, peace be upon him, made his migration from Mecca to Medina. That's when the Muslim lunar calendar or the Islamic lunar calendar starts. So we are 1446 years after that time period. So this is what you'll see in many cases when you see dates and stuff like that shared. Skipping the introduction, you're going to get some data on Islam in Philadelphia. Quite a number of Muslims in Philadelphia, depending on the source you're looking at, you'll get anywhere from between 250,000 to 400,000. We know that data on marginalized communities are often a bit more difficult to obtain. The Muslim community is no exception to that. One of the things that we also identify here in Philadelphia, unlike many other parts of the United States, is that the largest significant racial cross-section of Muslims in the city of Philadelphia identify as Black or African American. Identify as Black and African American. Ramadan, uh, and I'm trying not to do too much of the stuff that many of you may already know without being redundant, right? But Ramadan is the 9th month of the lunar calendar. Our calendar has 12 months. It's just that because it follows the lunar cycle or the moon cycle, as opposed to the solar cycle, the days in each month are either 28 or 29 days, as opposed to 30 or 31 days. So that means that each year the lunar calendar is roughly 12 days shorter. So it's for this reason that each year you see Ramadan and the Eid being moved up by about 2 weeks each year. So last year, if you were in the district last year, you would recall that we started fasting in the middle of March and ended roughly in the middle of April. This year, we are more or less fasting for the entire month of March and will end right around the end of March and the first day or so of April. So that's the so next year we're going to start in the middle of February and end in the middle of March, right? So it's going to move up by 2 weeks or so every year that the cycle comes around. Many of you know that we fast that Muslims who are observing the fast, they fast from dawn, which is before the sun rises, right? So about an hour and a half before the sun rises. So they fast from dawn up until sunset. On average, this year, that's going to be about 12 hours or 13 hours, because once the daylight saving time turns on March 8th, everything is going to shift by about an hour in the evening. So roughly about 12, 13 hours, if my math is correct, is how long people are going to be fasting this year. And for the Muslims who are observing the fast of Ramadan, the fast entails no eating or drinking from that dawn until sunset, and no intimate contact with your spouses from that dawn to sunset. So this is the general physical requirements of the fast. You'll see as I scroll down, the biggest purpose of the fast is as the creator told us in the book that Muslims follow, as the creator mentioned the book that Muslims follow, the Quran, that fasting is made compulsory for you. Let me just turn this off. That fasting is made compulsory for you, as it was made compulsory for those who came before you, right? So we know that Muslims are not the only ones who fast, right? Many of you who come from different traditions, you have the fast of David, the fast of Solomon, you have many different fasts that we are familiar with. And now we have intermittent fasting as a other thing as well. So you have all of these different fasts of different religious and faith communities that happened or occurred before Muslims and still occur right now in different traditions. So the whole purpose of fasting is not just to stay away from food, not just to stay away from drink, but it's all about this how do we get closer to God? How do we increase our consciousness or our awareness of the Creator and the role of the Creator in our lives? This is the primary purpose of fasting. They're not eating, they're not drinking, the no intimacy stuff. All of that is really just the physical manifestation of it and a way to remind us that we are trying to get closer to the Creator. And it's for this reason that you see people who identify as Muslim make changes during this month, right? Changes can be things that you see or things that are a bit more hidden. So for the changes that you see, right? How many of you, when Ramadan comes around, you start seeing people wearing head coverings that you may not have seen them wear before? Right? Or you start hearing them talk more about praying, or you start hearing them ask for prayer spaces or ask for time off to go to prayer. So you start seeing them wear different types of clothing, not just the head covering, but the woman may wear longer dresses or they may wear different type of baggy clothing. The men and the students may wear the same type of a long gown type thing, or they may wear something that looks like a skirt on the lower portion that may be called a lungi or an izar, depending on the part of the world that you're coming from. Um, so all of these things are ways in which, for Muslims, they use these as reminders of how they get closer to God during the month of Ramadan. It's the same thing that in many other traditions, where around Easter, Ash Wednesday, whatever have you, you find folks, they do things that get them closer to the Creator. That is more or less the similar thing, right? In these times of, because we're coming up on Lent, and you know that for Catholics and other Christians who observe Lent, this is something that you find, right? Whether it be abstention from a certain type of food or engaging in certain types of practices, is a similar thing that Muslims do in terms of how do you get closer to the Creator. Other things that Muslims do, they may give a lot of charity in the month of Ramadan. They may try to pay off debts that they have. If they owe someone close to them their debt, they may try to pay that off. They may try not to engage in any small talk. So if you in your circles, you may have had a Muslim who or somebody who you know was Muslim, and they were always the ones, or they were often the ones who would bring all of the 411 on things that were going on. And you find that for 29 or 30 days, they're not bringing that anymore, which is another thing. They're not bringing that anymore. It might just be their way of reminding themselves of how to get closer to the Creator. It may not be anything that you did that upset them. It just might be how they are engaging with their fast. So that is to say, if you know a Muslim who owes you some money, hit them up in Ramadan. Just give them 10 more days. Hit them up in Ramadan. They might be more willing to pay you in the month. Um, that was a joke. But still ask them. So all of these things, right? All of these things are things that we see as ways in which Muslims really try to use this month to get closer to God. So the rest of the content there is on these pages is really about what fasting is like, what you may see in it. And again, right, the things that they're abstaining from are things that they would normally be able to indulge in. The things that they shouldn't be indulging in, period, Muslims may use this time to really strive to avoid those things, right? If they were falling, because people make mistakes, right? If they were falling into those things ahead of Ramadan, you may find that during the month of Ramadan, they may really try to really avoid those things, whether it be gambling or anything else, right? Any other vices and challenges that we may have, you may find that they make a stronger effort to not do that during the month of Ramadan. Some Muslims avoid watching television, going to the movies, and other things like that during this month as a way to really engage their spirituality. a lot more communal practices get engaged in the month of Ramadan. You may find that many families that may not eat together as often may eat together more, break their fast together, start their fast together. Many Muslims get invited over to houses or to communities to break their fast together at sunset. So that will be either around 6 o'clock at the start of Ramadan or 7 o'clock once you pass the 8th of March, when daylight saving time shifts. Can't hear you as well. Everyone's hearing me? Yeah. Okay, cool. Um, uh, right at the end of the month of Ramadan, the very next day is the day of the Eid. And that is the day when it starts off with prayer. And the rest of that day really is a cultural thing, right? Meaning that what people do is based on their own family tradition or their own ethnic tradition or their national tradition or however it is, right? It's really more cultural. So the thing that people do is in the morning, somewhere between 7 and 9:30, 10 o'clock, they would gather to pray, and then some folks may just go over to family homes. Some organizations may have a big event in a public park or in some other central location where other people get invited to, where they sit and they eat and they have fun with the kids. So really, the day of the Eid is a holiday and a day of celebration for many, for Muslims, right? So this is why you find that that Muslims really look to see how can they really maximize the day of the Eid. So it's a blessing. It was a real a ease when the school district of Philadelphia chose to give to recognize the Eid holiday and allow students and staff to have that time. I'll make one note here. There are two Eids that Muslims observe. One is at the end of the month of Ramadan. So for us, this will be right around the end of March, the start of April. And 3 months later, give or take, is the second Eid, right? That's when they make the pilgrimage to Mecca. So one is Eid al-Fitr, or the celebration of the opening, and one is Eid al-Adha, or the celebration of the sacrifice, right? So and that celebration of sacrifice or the pilgrimage, that's all commemorating what was the actions of Abraham, who many of us are also familiar with, peace be upon him. Um, So why this toolkit? The purpose of this toolkit is really to give anyone who is encountering Muslims in an educational space some resources to consider when we're talking about inclusivity and accessibility to different members of our community. Um, and right now we're speaking with the school district. So, but this, if you know someone who is in higher ed, or if you know someone who is in a different school system, a private school system, feel free to share this resource with them, right? This resource is not a confidential resource. We want it to be shared as necessary because it gives ideas of what can be done when we're talking about creating space for folks to feel like they're part of a community. Biggest thing, one of the biggest things is time, right? I spent quite a bit of time talking about time. Um, if we are setting meetings in the evening, I mentioned it twice already, right? That the breaking of the fast 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and you will be provided with you can access prayer times, or you just Google Muslim prayer times or Ramadan prayer times in Philadelphia. You Google that, you'll see the different times, and just look for the one that says sunset prayer. The sunset prayer is the prayer that lets you know when the fast is going to be broken, right? So you're looking for anything that says sunset prayer. That is the exact time that Muslims are going to break their fast. So when you're setting meetings, whether at the admin level, staff level, or something that students are doing after school, just keep that in mind to acknowledge that if it's running during those hours for any reason that they may need time to break off, break their fast and pray at that time, because again, many individuals may strive to pray during this time. During the school day itself, for those who are increasing their observation of prayer, um, generally it's one or two prayers they may have to cover during the school day. The midday prayer, which will be around 12 o'clock, give or take. And then once the daylight savings time shifts around 1 o'clock, right? So think of that 12 to 1:30 time slot as a midday prayer. And then the afternoon prayer, because depending on how far someone has to travel, they may be still traveling when that mid-afternoon prayer goes out. So that prayer comes in right now around 3 something, and then it's going to shift once daylight savings time kicks in to 4 something, right? So this is the window of prayer. Most schools are done before that second prayer comes in right now, so that's not even a consideration. But for anything that's happening after school, just something to keep in mind. Fair enough. So just putting those times out there. Um, Space. I know we know that space is a challenge. We know that. However, we also know that other accommodations are being made um, for quiet rooms, de-escalation rooms, and things like that. So anything that can be a space where Muslims who are observing prayer, can break off and offer the prayer would be a plus, right? It would be a plus. Um, the room can be a multi-purpose room. It could be an interfaith meditation room, an interfaith quiet room. It could be a room that doubles as a quiet room at some point in time. That's fine. It just needs to be clean and needs to be big enough to accommodate um, 1 or 2 Muslims at a time. So that's during the regular prayer cycle. On Fridays, I didn't mention this. On Fridays, there's one communal prayer that that Muslims pray. So the same way those who may identify as Jews may attend Shabbat on Friday evening or Saturday morning, or those who attend church may attend it on Sunday morning or Wednesday night, evening mass, or whatever it is. Muslims attend that prayer, that communal prayer, middle of the day on Fridays. So you may find that during the month of Ramadan, um, the request to engage in the again, right, getting closer to God, the request to engage in that communal prayer may come up more often, right, to happen on Fridays. I have a request from someone right now that I need to respond to in the school district who's trying to figure out how to get how to get support for people to lead the prayers that they're trying to allow their students to host and stuff like that, which is another conversation that we can have. And I know Sister Naima Mutalib, who works for the school district, but is also representing one of our community partners, the Majlis Asura, which is a representation of the Muslim community by and large here in the city of Philadelphia. I know they're working on a program to try to help um, get folks who are in the community to support schools that are looking for people to come lead prayers or whatever it is. So that's something that can be discussed offline within the boundaries of whatever the rules, norms, policies, and regulations are of the school district and the individual schools. Um, in terms of if there's an event that's happening during the day and food is being provided, consider to-go bags or to-go boxes for Muslims who may want to break their fast afterwards. Or after the meeting. Also remember that food insecurity is still a very much a reality here in the city of Philadelphia in a significant way. So whereas you have students who may have been where their meals may have been the lunch that they were getting, if they're being provided with the school lunch and now they're fasting, um, if they don't have an option for food after school, then that is something that needs to be considered, right? Because again, food insecurity is still something that the Philadelphia community is dealing with by and large. So within the scope of what is possible, consider how meals can still be provided or made available to students who might be observing the fast during the day. Childcare centers, same thing. This is about in employers and childcare centers. If you ever wondering what is the appropriate thing to say to a Muslim who's fasting, happy Ramadan, or if you really want to bite your tongue, Ramadan Mubarak, um, or anything like that, it really just means blessed month of Ramadan or blessed month of fasting. or happy Ramadan or have a blessed Ramadan is also completely okay. Being flexible to differentiation, and I'm going to try to start wrapping this up. Muslims are not monolithic. You may know Fatima, the Muslim sister, does things a certain way. Let me just make sure I'm not calling any Muslim names on here, right? Hanifa, the other Muslim sister, may do things slightly differently, and that's fine. One doesn't mean that one is a better Muslim than the other one, right? Muhammad might be doing things one way. Bilal might do things a different way, right? In terms of one might be breaking their fast alone. The other one might be like, no, I have to get to the masjid to break my fast with people in the community. Both of those things are very much acceptable within the space of Islam. There's some Muslims again may choose to change their dress and their outward appearance during the month of Ramadan. Other Muslims may not choose to do that. It doesn't mean that one is a better Muslim than the other one. So be open to differentiation that Muslims express their Islam in different ways, some of it being very cultural. Special groups as student athletes, staff with health challenges may also have different needs, meaning that there are accommodations for those who do not fast, right? For those who are traveling, for those who are sick, for those who just had a baby, who might be breastfeeding, for those who are on their cycle. So all of these things Islam makes accommodations for them to not fast. We do not have to go in and ask, hey, I saw you were not eating yesterday. Why are you eating today? What's up with that? You're not Muslim anymore? Like that type of stuff, we don't need to we shouldn't do. Let me not hedge on it. We shouldn't do because we might be asking someone to share something that they identify as something that's very personal to them. Fair enough. So again, Islam, even within this realm, Islam allows for differentiation based on what somebody is navigating on a personal level. Mentioned that. Consistent accommodation. So this Ramadan is just 1 month where a lot of these things become heightened. Understand that many Muslims have these needs outside of the month of Ramadan. Many Muslims still will need a place to pray outside of Ramadan. They will still need time for prayer outside of Ramadan. I didn't speak about the type of food. Oftentimes, I'm Philly, so I can say this. Oftentimes, when we talk about providing food, the understanding of what is halal is like there's no pork. Well, there's no pork. No pork is one level of permissibility. Some folks might be familiar with something called kosher, and you'll see all of these halal trucks across the city now. The word halal doesn't simply mean no pork. It means that the meat has been and the food has been prepared in a very specific way. So even as you are preparing, if you are giving out meals and stuff like that, and you're like, all right, we have Muslims here, so we won't order any pork. Understand that that is not the litmus test for what makes something halal, right? And of course, if you have salad and stuff like that, it's just a little bit of bacon bits in it. There's not a whole lot of bacon bits. It's not. Well, can you just pick out the bacon bits? It's not the option that we want to have them go with as well. So the food accommodations are not only for Ramadan, but also outside the month of Ramadan as well. Communal prayers, we spoke about this. For those of you who are observing the month of Ramadan, for those of you who are fasting, for those of you who are, however, you're engaging your own identity as a Muslim, you need to speak up, ask, offer insight, and understand that folks are understanding or navigating their own learning around this at times. So something not being provided doesn't mean that it's an intentional exclusion. Sometimes folks really don't know, or they may have seen it done a certain way in one other place. I may assume that that's how it gets done everywhere. So those who identify as Muslims or those who engage with Islam, by all means, speak up and express what your needs are, and understand that that things can be negotiated in ways that make everyone feel comfortable and supported, right? That your administration feels supported, and you as an individual and a community of Muslims, you also feel supported. And to those of you who are supporting folks who identify as Muslims or however they identify in your community, right? Having the conversations and asking questions if there's something that's unclear or uncertain, um, ask a question. I think there are many, I know that there are many Muslims in your communities who are willing to have conversations and answer the questions. And if you are unsure of how to approach it or where to approach it, that's what I am officially here for, to really help the community navigate navigate this. The rest of this is just some resources, and then we have some frequently asked questions that you can address. So I know I went over I think this is just around 25 minutes. This is the extent of the toolkit here that we have. Um, so I'm going to leave it open for questions and answers at this point in time. I do want to say one thing before people may start dropping off. One of the things that my office is going to do for this year is that we are going to host an iftar for city employees. We're going to host an iftar in the mayor's reception room for city employees, those who are observing Ramadan or who are observing the fast, but everyone is invited. Anyone is invited to attend, right? So there have been iftars in City Hall before. The invite list has been a bit more curated. This is for anyone who works for the city of Philadelphia. And I'm including SDP in that. I'll give you a little flavor, right? I'll include SDP in that as well. So if you have an at philasdp.org email address, by all means, you can register. So I'm going to share the link inside the chat while we are doing the questions and answers. I'm going to share the link inside the chat so that way you can, if you want to attend, you're free to observe. You're free to attend. All right. I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Opening up for questions and answers.